Hi everyone, this is Nightfighter22 here. I hope you guys are all well. Now today I'm very excited because I'm showing you a chess.com game which illustrates that if you play the King's Gambit correctly, this is a very aggressive opening and you will be able to checkmate your opponent's king in the middle game. Okay, so we start out with the King's Gambit, e4, e5, I play f4, and then my opponent opts to take on f4. So this is the King's Gambit accepted lines. Whole idea being you're peeling off this pawn from your opponent's centre and getting a very quick attack yourself. I now play knight to f3 here, primarily because, for those of you who don't know, if something's not done about this queen to h4 check move, it can be quite deadly. This is because I can't play g3 to block the check, because then f takes g3, and if I recapture, then the queen that's on h4 will be able to take the rook in the corner. So I just play knight to f3, defending that threat. Also, it's a good development move. I want to get castled as quickly as possible and get my rook onto the open f-file. He now plays bishop to e7, and you can see what he's trying to do. He says, yeah, you've defended this threat against the queen, but what happens when I have two diagonal pieces indirectly attacking h4? So if he was then to play bishop to h4 on the next move, if I took with the knight, then he can play queen takes h4, and then we got the whole scenario again. I want to be able to castle though. I don't want to move my king to f1, and I know this is coming, so rather than playing a move like h4 and mucking up my king side, I tend to go with bishop to c4. This is also a great development move. You've even got ideas of a fried liver if you want to move your knight to g5 or e5 and attack on here. He does play bishop to h4 check. I play g3. The only real thing that I can do, obviously you can't castle out a check. And now, when he plays f takes g3, this gives me the chance to castle. Now, this is all very crazy stuff, but it has actually been played in around 100 chess games that I found, with a very strong percentage win for white. After he plays g takes h2, I'm 3 pawns down, but I have a great attacking position. The only thing you've got to remember, if you ever get into anything like this yourself, is whatever you do, do not take on h2. Taking on h2 will lead to your king being completely exposed. There's no g-pawn, there's no f-pawn, there's no h-pawn, and you'll be settling for a very, very difficult game. The actual idea is just to play king to h1. There's no real danger of this pawn becoming promoted anytime soon with the king on h1. And it's actually useful because you're using one of your opponent's pawns effectively as your pawn, if you see what I mean. So this pawn, from black's perspective, is a fairly useless piece in the short term, but in the short term for you, it's a fairly useful piece because you're using it to protect your own king. Only disadvantage is you can't really get the rook onto g1 to attack down the g file, but with all these pieces pointing at f7, I usually keep it on the f file anyway. Okay, so he plays bishop to g5. I'm not really sure the purpose behind this move because it sets me up perfectly for what I want to do next. I think he wanted to get the bishop out of there in case, the connection was interrupted and then I could take his bishop, but I'm not really sure. Maybe he was trying to get the bishop onto f4, but I'm not really sure. He might have just played bishop to g3 if he wanted to do that. Anyway, I can now play bishop takes f7 check. And there's a reason for this. It's because if he were to take my bishop on f7, I'd then be able to take his bishop, and it doesn't matter if it's defended because the rook is checking the king as well as the knight. And when two pieces are checking the king, the knight and the rook, the king has to move. There's no other way to defend two pieces directly checking your king. You've got to move it. So he sees that. He doesn't want to have his king all the way out in the open, so he kind of adopts for a similar strategy. He defends his own king by hiding it behind one of my pieces, which is exactly what I'm doing. And now I can go ahead and play knight takes g5. The whole idea being, after queen takes g5, I can play d4 with a tempo and try and get my other bishop into the game whilst attacking the queen. And if you look at this position from his perspective, it's pretty difficult. It's pretty difficult to find any kind of counterplay. All of his pieces, after he's lost that bishop, are stuck on the back rank. He hasn't got time to move any of them, and his queen is under attack. So the queen goes to h4. I don't really know of a better place he could have put it. Anywhere along the 6th rank would have had to been on the queen side, and that would have been fairly difficult. I can now play bishop to h5 check. This is a great move. It's a great move because it forces the king out of his little hidey hole. So he has to move off the f-file, but at the same time, he can't sneak away to the queen side because this bishop is blocking him from going to e8. He goes to king e7, and now I can come crashing in, rook to f7 check, and there is nothing he can do. He could have played... The move he did play was king to e6, but I'm just considering king to d8, because the problem with king to d8 is I can play rook to f8 check, and he'll have to go back to e7, and then we just then we'll be stuck in the same position. So maybe on a king to d8, I might have to play something different and get my queen out into the game. But he played his king up to e6, and I brought out my queen straight away to f3. Because now he's on e6, he can't move back. Oops, sorry. As long as this rook is being defended by the bishop, he can't move back onto e7. He's blocked in by his own pawns. And this queen, when it gets up to the 5th rank, defended by my 2 pawns, is going to be very hard to stop. He plays knight to f6, which this is the losing move in the game. From here, there's a mate in 2, which I didn't play, and there's a mate in 3, which I did play. See if you guys pause the video and see if you guys can spot either of those checkmates. Okay, so after you've given that a go, the move that I played was queen to f5 check, which is the correct move for both of the checkmates. He now plays king to d6, at which point I played bishop to f4 check, which is probably not the quickest way to go about it, but that's what I did. Bishop to f4 check, king to c6, and then queen to c5 is mate. What a game, hey? What a game. Getting the king out there must have been so humiliating from him. The alternative is, instead of even bothering to get your bishop out, is to simply play queen all the way across to c5 check. That forces the king back to e6, and then because the rook is supported by the queen, you can move the rook across to e7, and that is checkmate as well. I've just noticed that those are exactly the same length, so playing bishop to f4 check wasn't a mistake at all, because it's the same number of moves. King to c6, and queen to c5 is mate. So that's how you attack in the King's Gambit. This is how you do it. I feel like I should do another tutorial on this opening. I think it's a very, very solid, well, not solid, but very solid in terms of good way to play if you're an aggressive player. If you're not an aggressive player, then maybe don't try it. But if you are an aggressive player, you can get really good structures like this. Alright guys, so thanks very much for watching the video. I've been Nightfighter22. I wish you good luck playing chess, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye everyone.